Afternoon, Rotarians. I'm Ruth Shelley, President of the Rotary Club of Portland. Welcome to our live weekly membership meeting. As our banner says, Rotary opens opportunities. I've got the banner right here. To find solutions for today's challenges. Healing from the pandemic, recovery from the economic downturn, and peace building as we seek racial justice. This week, we focus on door number 2, recovery, as our fellow Rotarian Carol Salter shares Easter Seals Oregon's work with veterans who are homeless. But first, let's welcome Assistant Governor and past President Rotarian Chris Achterman for our reflection. Chris?
Okay, here we go. So Veterans Day was originally called Armistice Day, and it was set aside to honor those who served in the war to end all wars. As we know, that was a misnomer. It was later altered to Veterans Day to honor those who served in the military, especially in times of conflict. You may not know anyone who has risked their life to serve our country and defend our rights. It does not matter if you know anyone. Still, take a moment to reflect that right now, there are men and women all over the world serving to protect us. They will not be home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. They will not get to share special times with their families. Some may even never return. It is right that we have a day to honor the service, but we must always hope that eventually that service will not be necessary.
Thank you, Chris. Important words. And of course, we remember our veterans and active servicemen and women who are facing exacerbated challenges with the pandemic. If any of you would like to give a future reflection, please fill out the link provided in the chat box. And now I'd like to ask that Rotarians who have invited a guest to raise their hand, and Maria will call on you to unmute and introduce them. Or if you're a visiting Rotarian who came on your own, please raise your hand and introduce yourself. Maria, can you scan the gallery and see if we have any guests today?
I am looking, and I know we had Danielle Banks had a guest coming today. Danielle, are you on with us to introduce your guest? I'm looking to see if Danielle has signed in, and I don't see her. But Danielle had shared with me that we had a Peace Fellow joining us today for our meeting. So I apologize. I will get name and information on her and share that with you all. But thank you, Danielle, for bringing a guest. And I don't look to see any other hands flailing at me. Oh, Carol Salter. Carol, I'm sorry, you used the wave hand. I thought you were just waving. Okay, Carol.
Thank you. I have invited Ellen Catania. She is our development manager for Easter Seals Oregon, and she's down there in the corner. Hi, everyone.
Welcome, Ellen. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. So happy to
And
be
if guests pop on during the meeting, we will acknowledge them at the end. But now I'd like to extend a happy anniversary to everyone who joined Rotary Club of Portland in November. We alternate each week honoring birthdays and Rotary anniversaries for the month. Please note the names of these anniversary people and reach out to them with your congratulations. It's so important, now more important than ever, that we keep up our membership to keep our club going and look at these veterans of another kind with 30 plus years service of Tom Kelly and Brian Rosenthal. Congratulations. We appreciate you all. And now moving on, and very relevant to today's program, November's Committee of the Month is our Homelessness Solutions Committee. Please welcome Rotarian Tara Henderson to talk about the work that they're doing. Tara?
Thank you, Ruth. As we all know, that homelessness in our community is one of our greatest challenges, and especially hit hard by those circumstances are our veterans. So today we've put together a poll. regarding homelessness and focusing on veterans. Are we ready to proceed with the poll, Siobhan? All right, I will read the questions. I believe, there we go. Okay, so the first two are just regarding your personal circumstances and have you ever been homeless? Or have you known any family or friends who have experienced homelessness? And then on to our veterans, just a quiz to see, check your knowledge about our homeless veterans. How many homeless veterans do you think reside in Multnomah County? And what percentage of homeless veterans in Multnomah County are actually unsheltered, living out on the street? And what percentage of homeless population in Multnomah County are veterans? So one is the number and one is a percentage. And I just want to throw a shout out to the Marine Corps and a happy birthday to the Marine Corps today. And happy Veterans Day to all tomorrow. Do we have results from our poll yet? Or are we still? There we go. All right, I think everybody can see the results there. Predominantly, our group has not experienced homelessness, but we have some that say yes, so we might be able to get some insight from those individuals. We have quite a few who have family and friends who have experienced it. 47% got the answer right, that the number in Multnomah County is 474. And the fourth question of the percentage of homeless in Multnomah County that are unsheltered, almost everybody got that right at 49%. And the percentage of homeless population in Multnomah County that are veterans is actually 12%. So we missed that one just by a little bit, but that's okay, now we know. Ruth, back to you.
Thank you, Tara. Fascinating. And I love those polls. It really helps to put numbers to these concepts. And of course, we have to think about these numbers, not as numbers, but as people. We'll learn more later when Carol speaks. Now we're going to disappear and enter a virtual tabletop talk to discuss a topic coming up. Please introduce yourself to others in the group. A minute or so before you come back to this main meeting, you'll get a visual heads up. And may I suggest a topic for your discussion? Having gone through this poll, was there anything that surprised you about our veterans who are homeless? Or an alternative topic, what are your hopes for our city and our country now that we've gone through another election? Here we go. And now on to our program. After our speaker today is finished, if you'd like to ask Carol a question, Maria will be moderating the Q&A through the chat box. So keep track of those questions in the chat and she will call on you. And now please welcome Rotarian Dan Bramsky as today's chair of the day. Dan?
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians. I am proud to present our speaker of the day, Carol Salter, who's also one of our newer club members and also an active part of our Homeless Solutions Committee. Carol served as the president, CEO of Easter Seals Oregon for a little over a year and has 16 additional years as the assistant vice president of Workforce Solutions for the National Office of Easter Seals, which works with over 45 affiliates in the US who have workforce programs for individuals with disabilities and veterans. A Northwest girl, Carol attended Chemeketa Community College in Salem and went on to get her master's degree in education from the George Washington University in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago. As a member of the Portland Rotary Club, Carol's dream is to collaborate with other nonprofit and for-profit agencies and employers to open avenues for all Oregonians who have barriers to employment. Please welcome me in a warm welcome to Carol as she shares with us all the good work Easter Seals Oregon is doing to help our veterans in our community.
Thank you. So my name is Carol. I'm the president CEO of Easter Seals Oregon. Our main office is in Tigard, but we do have programs in 18 counties in Oregon. I'm the wife of a veteran who has a significant disability, and I'm considered his caregiver. So this issue of veterans is near and dear to my heart. I also tell him he's at risk of becoming homeless at any time. Not really, that's a joke. I thought that it would be interesting to start out by giving you a really quick history lesson on how Easter Seals is connected to Rotary, because many of you may not know that. In 1907, Rotarian Edgar Allen lost his son in a streetcar accident. And he believes that the reason why he lost his son is there were no hospitals to be able to take care of him, of his son. So he founded a hospital in Ohio after his son passed away. And soon after, Edgar Allen dedicated his life to creating community-based services for children with disabilities, recruiting Rotarians to create a network of programs that would become Easter Seals. Since the 1920s, Rotary clubs have worked with local Easter Seals organizations as both volunteers and program sponsors. In fact, Paul Harris, the founder of Rotary International, and Edgar Allen, founder of Easter Seals, they shared a friendship and a passion for service and volunteerism to improve communities worldwide. They were both men who believed that with success comes a responsibility to others. So regardless of race, color, or creed, the dedication of Rotarians to service and impact shines through their support of Easter Seals. So both with the Rotary and with Easter Seals, we have celebrated over 100 years together. In 1945, most of you think, when you think of Easter Seals, probably think about children who have disabilities. That's what the general public thinks about when they hear about Easter Seals. In 1945, we expanded our vision across the country and opened services to adults with disabilities, including returning World War II veterans. So clear back in 1945, we were serving veterans. What's now called post-traumatic stress used to be called shell shock. And in 1947, Easter Seals Oregon opened our doors to providing services to children and adults with disabilities and veterans. At the time, our organization was called the Oregon Society for Crippled Children and Adults. Our first executive director and founder was Howard F. Feast, and our first president was Douglas McKay, who was the former Oregon governor, who later became the U.S. Secretary of Interior. So I want to show you a quick video of one of our Easter Seals program that talks a little bit about veterans and what services that they bring to our program. I'm going to share my screen with you and enjoy this. Here we go.
We've all heard how military veterans adjusting to the civilian world may have certain issues.
30, 70.
If only everyone had this issue. No matter what challenge they face, Easter Seals is here for America's veterans.
So I don't know if you noticed that time difference there. That's, you know, a lot
Want to know the secret to more energy?
Sorry. A lot of our stereotypes of veterans just are not true. And so I think it's very important that we open our minds as we look at some of these other issues that we're going to be talking about. In 2010, Easter Seals Oregon opened our very first employment program for homeless veterans, and we provided job training and employment services in both Medford and Grants Pass, Oregon. Our program was so successful, we applied for another grant. This grant was funded through the Federal Department of Labor, and that program has since expanded to Salem and Albany, and then it expanded to Portland. And this year, we just received a brand new grant to serve homeless veterans in Eugene and Roseburg. In 2013, we opened our very first supportive services for veterans and family program. This is a housing program, and it's considered low barrier housing. What that means is we get veterans into houses no matter what. They could still be using, they could be still drinking, but we want to get them into a place where they will be safe and start establishing that foundation that they need to become productive members of society. So it was so successful. Our program in Salem was so successful that the Federal Veterans Administration asked us if we would expand our contract to Multnomah County. So we have this program both in the Salem and in Multnomah County. And so this doesn't sound like an Easter Seals commercial. I want to make mention here that TPI, which is Transition Projects, they also have funding from the supportive services for veterans and families in Multnomah County. They operate west of 82nd and we operate east of 82nd. Now I'm going to show you another real quick video here. It's something that I want you to think about, and we often, when we think about veterans, we are usually thinking, or many of us might be thinking about the male veteran. And so here's a little snippet of a female veteran. And I'm going to share my screen here. I am going to share my screen. Okay. Here we go.
If you've served in the military, certain habits may be hard to shake. For reintegration and adjustment issues, big, small, and everything in between, Easter Seals is here for America's veterans.
Jones, 0326, here to make a deposit.
Thank you for that one. So female veterans, I want to remind Rotarians that there's a large number of female veterans and that they too can and do become homeless at some point. In fact, it is a fact that many women veterans don't self-identify as veterans. Often they don't want to go to the VA for health services due to the prevalence of men at these facilities. Some may have post-traumatic stress and some of them may have been elevated due to military sexual trauma, as well as the typical traumas of war. In fact, I would have loved to have had a female veteran tell her story on here. We helped her and her two young children get into a home of their own. She was escaping a domestic violent relationship, and she couldn't safely come out in public with her story. She's safe, her children are safe, and they do have a home. Since I can't share her story, I wanted to share another story of a veteran. His name's Michael, and I want him to tell you his story in his own words. And I'm going to share my screen again with you.
If you've served in the military.
Sorry. All right, so here's Mike's story. And there is a little bit of background noise here, but that's because of COVID and social distancing, we had to take this outside.
My name is Mike. I'm a veteran of the U.S. Air Force. I served for 4 years. And after coming home, I met with a series of unfortunate circumstances. Pretty unfortunate things happened to me, and I made a few bad choices along the way. I lost everything: a job, home, family, nearly all my worldly possessions, almost everything I had in the bank. With what I had left, I came to Oregon. Found myself on the streets of Portland, but sheltered at the Portland Rescue Mission. I knew I was in a dire situation, but at the same time, I knew I wanted to get out of it. Someone told me about the Easter Seals program. It helps homeless veterans get back on their feet and find work. I never thought of Easter Seals as a place that helped veterans. I didn't know, but I learned that the organization has been dedicated to helping veterans who come home and found themselves homeless or in need of help since World War II. The Veterans Program for Easter Seals is exactly what I needed. I knew I had some pretty big obstacles to finding a place to live, work. Easter Seals was with me every step of the way to the table. I know a lot of people think of homeless people, homeless veterans, as people with drug or alcohol addictions, or that they've just given up on life. You want to sleep in a tent or a car on the streets. But I've been clean and sober for 10 years, and I never wanted to be homeless in my life. I just needed a program that didn't judge me or put up more obstacles, but that believed 100% that I could be successful, that I deserved a second chance in life, a chance to contribute to society once more, live my life with dignity. And Easter Seals did that. From day one, they worked with me to get a solid plan together for getting out of the situation I was in, including addressing all the hurdles that were holding me back, like not having a birth certificate or ID, or even the documentation to show that I'd been honorably discharged from the Air Force, which I was. Within a month of enrolling in the Easter Seals program for homeless veterans, I moved into an apartment funded through Easter Seals and its donors. They even provided me with a bed to sleep on and a welcome home kit with dishes, sheets, towels, food, and other essentials. Now that I had a safe and permanent place to sleep and call home, I could focus effectively on finding a job. Easter Seals helped me create a solid step-by-step plan for securing employment, and it worked. Within a month, and in the middle of this pandemic, I found a great job at Kohl's, and I love it. I've been there for 3 months, and it's good. I'm on my way now, not only to becoming self-sufficient, but to living the life of my dreams, a life that's respectable. I know that there are a lot of people out there like me right now, because I met some of them on the streets in the Portland Rescue Mission. Veterans who lost their footing after they served, and for whatever reason ended up at rock bottom with no home or job or any support system. Like me, completely alone. And even though they're alone, they're eager to work, determined to contribute to society, and certainly capable of success. So please, don't give up on our veterans, or assume that we're all addicts or completely broken and beyond the reach of help or hope. We're not. We're not good for that. It's true. We aren't. Thanks for letting me tell my story.
I'll let that sink in for a minute. So I want to tell you that, the one thing I wanted to tell you about Michael is, yes, he has a part-time job at Kohl's, which he absolutely loves, but he is even trying to further himself more. He's a seamstress and he's making masks. So when I asked him, he did this video just for you, for Rotary. And when I asked him, is there something that we can do for you? He said, well, if I had an iron and an ironing board, I could do better with my masks. And so we reached out to a different agency, and they brought him an iron and an ironing board and a gift card to Joanne's. So they just dropped that off this morning so that he can make some money on the side besides his part-time job. I mean, it's just phenomenal what this person has done and how far he came. So how the program actually works, due to the pandemic, it's most important to get the veterans off the streets and then put them where they can socially distance safely. So we received CARES Act funding from the Federal Veterans Administration to move them quickly from their tents and the sidewalks into hotels and motels. They can stay there typically anywhere from 3 to 4 months, although there's no real moratorium on how long they can stay there. But what we want to do is help them find permanent housing while they're in there. And we want them to be able to set up their own personal homes. Once we enroll them, once we put them into their homes, we co-enroll them into our other employment program, which is the Homeless Veteran Reintegration Program. That program's funded through the Federal Department of Labor, and that helps them to become employed. So we can pay for training, forklift training, CNA services, just about anything that can fit with what their transferable skills are, so that they can then pay their rent in the future. Our federal grants, both of those federal grants allows us to pay for application fees, background checks, ordering their DD-214s to prove that they're veterans, driver's licenses if they need it. It also helps pay for staffing so that we can go in and inspect the properties before the veterans move in. And we can pay the first and last month's rent. In some cases, we can pay rent for a few additional months if they haven't found a job yet. So while they're looking for employment, they do need to look for employment so that they can eventually take over those payments. And the things I think that the grant does not allow us to do is to pay for things like household supplies in order to make the apartment a home. Things like sheets, towels, pillows, beds, vacuums, brooms, silverware, plates, glasses. In Salem, Oregon, we're working with the Elks Club. They decided to put together what they, I love what they call it. They call them the welcome home boxes. So they put together things in these welcome home boxes, and when they move in, like Michael stated, that we gave him some sheets and bedding when he first moved in. You saw him in his apartment. It's very sparsely furnished in there. So, you know, it's not that we're doling out things that these veterans don't need, but we just want them to have a real home, have a plate to eat off of. And you know, other items that are needed are things like playing cards, books, puzzles, things for them to do, activities for them to do while they're living in their apartments, because they're no longer wandering the streets. So finally, as the end of my presentation, I have one last video that I want to show you. It's another really short video, but it talks a lot about the services, the skills that veterans can bring to the community. And again, since we do have a veterans employment program, if there are businesses out there and you want to hire veterans in your business, then you know, you can look to us to be able to be like a staffing agency for you, to make sure that the veterans that we're referring over to you have the right skills that you're looking for. But I'm going to share my screen with you one more time and show you this last video, and then we can go to questions and answers, okay?
I should warn you, this job requires a lot of travel and long hours. You'll need to be a team player in order to succeed, and results oriented.
Mission complete.
So if we hire you, what do you think your biggest challenge will be?
Honestly, sir, figuring out what to wear.
America's veterans. Hire the best. Access their experience with Easter Seals.
So there you go. I want to make sure that this doesn't start up again. I'm open for Maria for any kinds of questions and answers now from anybody.
Wonderful. Thank you, Carol. We do have a few here in the queue, and I'm going to start with Rotarian Tara Henderson. Tara, would you like to share your question?
Sure. So my question was just what requirements are there for a vet to enter one of these programs, if any?
So they have to either be homeless or at risk of homelessness. And what that means is they could be couch surfing. They could be staying on a friend's couch or even in a parent's basement. We cannot serve National Guard, and we can't serve reserves, and we can't serve people who have a dishonorable discharge. But anybody else that's homeless or at risk of homelessness, we can serve. So even if they have an other than honorable discharge, a general discharge, or an honorable, we can serve them.
Thank you, Carol. Our next question is from Rotarian Phil Levinson. Phil?
Carol, a lot of these veterans will have disabilities and health issues. Do you help them go through the paperwork necessary to connect them with VA healthcare services as well as disability services, which maybe provide them with some compensation?
Yes, so we have a person that specifically does what's called SOAR. He connects them with SSI or SSDI so that can help pay for their rent if they have disabilities that are significant enough to be able to qualify for those two programs. And we do have a lot of veterans who have post-traumatic stress. We have veterans who have traumatic brain injuries, depression, are in recovery from drug and alcohol. So all of those, I think in our homeless committee meeting, one of the questions that was asked is about the recidivism rate. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but how many people lose their homes. And that's what we need, is that wraparound service. The supportive services for veterans and families program just mandated about 2 months ago, just mandated that we hire health navigators, which is going to be huge for this population, so that we can refer them to other organizations in the community that do deal with mental health issues and then physical issues, besides the SOAR, getting them linked up with SSI and SSDI.
Thank you, Carol. Our next question comes from Rotarian Chris Achterman. Chris?
Unmute. Okay. I know that Multnomah County and the city of Portland have a coordinated homeless task force. In Houston, they created a program sort of tied around that kind of a structure and specifically identified and got all the organizations that could involved in working on homeless veterans. And they reduced their rate of homeless veterans to like 0. Are you coordinating with anybody, or are you working independently?
Yeah, we definitely coordinate with everybody. We're coordinating with Do Good Multnomah. We're coordinating with TPI. We're coordinating with other veterans programs. We are involved in many of the committees and that deal with homeless issues, not just the veterans homeless issues. And there is a new RFP that's coming out from the state to deal with all veterans issues. And what we are proposing to do in that is to be able to serve the reserves and guards members who are homeless because they don't qualify for our other program. So we try to find where the gaps are out in our program and what are the gaps in the community. And then we bring those organizations together. We're very proactive about playing nice in the sandbox with all of the other nonprofit organizations.
I like that imagery, nice in the sandbox, Carol. Our next question comes from Rotarian Henry Lesueur. Henry?
Thanks, Maria. So my question is about expanding capacity in homelessness shelters. I've heard from a lot of Rotarians and other friends and colleagues about how they're noticing what seems to be like a pretty dramatic increase in homelessness in the Portland community. Is that something that Easter Seals has looked into? What would Easter Seals need to increase capacity? And if Easter Seals is not in that position right now, are there other organizations that are looking to increase capacity soon?
There are organizations and they're always looking to increase capacity. And in fact, this grant that's coming out right now, that is something they can build shelters, they can expand their shelters to be able to accept more people into the shelters. We do think that there's going to be a tsunami coming when the rent moratorium on kicking people out of their houses because they can't pay rent. We think we're going to see a huge number of people who become homeless because they can't catch up on their rent because, as you know, they have to pay all of that back rent. And so we're trying to position ourselves, but what we need is money. And so Easter Seals, we would love to have our own homeless shelter. We would love to get a hotel or a motel where we can bring people into it and serve individuals. We just don't have the capital to do that at this time. But we do work with all of the other agencies that do have shelters, and they will need to be expanding services. There's, you know, I was talking in one of our breakout sessions that the Grotto has 3.5 acres that they would love to set up a tiny village on, or somehow house not just veterans, but people who are homeless on there. But then again, they need the capital to be able to do those tiny houses. And then they need to work with the neighborhoods so that the neighbors will be okay with them coming into their, even though they're there now. Homeless people are there now on that 3.5 acres. They need the neighborhood support to be able to put like a tiny village there. We're always looking for ideas of how we can get more homeless people off the street and safe in houses.
Thank you, Carol. Our next question comes from Rotarian Bill Diaz. Bill?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. You see how they're using the old jail as a way to get people off the street? Are you working at all with them as like a temporary housing, working with that group to get homeless people out of their tents and into at least into a shelter using the former jail?
Well, and Bill, that's a great question. What we're doing is we're working with them to say, if you have any veterans that are in your population, those are the ones that we can move into hotels and motels and then into permanent housing, which frees up more space for other homeless people who aren't veterans.
Yeah. So there is a coordination going on there. That's very important. And I had the impression about 4 or 5 years ago that there weren't that many homeless veterans on the street. Have they increased in the last 4 or 5 years? I thought at one point we had most of the homeless veterans taken care of.
No, that's a misnomer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My misunderstanding. Thank
you.
And one final question, if I may.
No.
The model that you just described, you know, we've been approached, our committee, about the teen homelessness problem.
Yes.
And also the homelessness problem of teens who may have been involved in gang activity, and how if they had something like what you described, they could put the gang activity behind them and move through into a life of permanence and job training and things like that. Have you been approached about using that model maybe to help with the teen homeless population?
This is one of my dreams. When I worked in Washington State, I had several different programs for homeless youth and for at-risk youth. And so I would love, as Easter Seals, we would love to have a youth program for homeless youth. And along with our expertise of working with people who have disabilities, because a lot of those teens that you're talking about do have disabilities along as part of why they're homeless.
Well, I share your vision. So if there's any way, maybe we got to put our heads together and figure out a funding source or something. But I would love to see you expand into this area. So I just want to just say that on behalf of our Rotary Club of Portland. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our next question comes from Rotarian Terry Goldman. Terry?
Thank you, Maria. Carol, great presentation. Really appreciate the work you're doing with veterans and how you present information. Also was looking at charitynavigator.com and saw how highly rated your organization is. So congratulations to you and your team on running a very fiscally responsible organization. My question is, you mentioned that veterans have to have an honorable discharge.
No. They can't have a dishonorable discharge.
Okay.
But
Okay.
any
So
other kind they can.
So still same sort of question. So where do you refer veterans that have had a dishonorable discharge, knowing that there's some social injustices that maybe in our military system have created a dishonorable discharge that perhaps is unfounded?
Very much so. So we have to refer them to the shelters that are out there right now. We can't, both the Veterans Administration and the Department of Labor are not allowing us to work with those individuals. But the new funding that's coming out, we're looking at those disenfranchised individuals too. And there are veterans that will say, if you have a dishonorable discharge, then you're not a veteran, which is not necessarily so, Terry. You know, like you said, it may be different circumstances of what brought them to that place. But we do referrals for them to other agencies. And like if they have a disability, a documented disability, we can refer them to the State Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. We can serve them through that agency because we have another program that works with them, with people with disabilities. So we try to find an open door for them.
Great, thank you so much.
Wonderful. Our next question is from Rotarian Bill Durville. Bill?
Quick question for you, Carol. Thanks for your presentation. Of the Vietnam veterans, how have they been on the street a long time? Well, in generality, how long have they been out there?
A lot of them have been out there since they came home from Vietnam. Typically, you might find them more in the hills, in very rural areas. You might not find as many downtown. And we go out into the camps, we go out into the hills, anywhere where we have a program, we go out and we look to them to see if they want to come into our program. But there's not as many on the street as you might think, unless they have some pretty significant mental health issues, and then you might find them on the street. Generally, they're out in the camps and out in rural areas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Another question from Rotarian Al Jubitz. Al.
Yeah, regarding the capital needs to move people off the street, our committee was involved with Catholic Charities out at Kenton Village. And my recollection is that the residents of Kenton's Women's Village paid some percentage of the cost, and the public sector paid some percentage of the cost, and donors, the private sector, paid some percentage of the cost. Is that correct? And B, is that a model that you think could go forward?
Al, I don't know what the funding mechanism looks like for that, so I can't answer your A question, but definitely B, I think that that's a great funding model. I think that we have to bring foundations, public and state and federal funding. We have to bring it all to the table so that we can react and get the individuals off the streets.
Well, does it work to have the residents pay some of it? They have income, just not enough to pay rent, the normal rent.
Yes.
Is that true? Is that the right model to have them have skin in the game?
Yes, it definitely is. And so we do that too with our supportive services for veterans and housing is after a month or two, we say, okay, you really need to get a job now. And we have a program to help you get a job because you need to start picking up your rent. So we may share that with them, 50-50 or 75-25 in order to get them to the point where they're 100% responsible for their own living expenses.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. And we actually do have some more questions. I'm going to give our last one here because it's connected to Nancy, Rotarian Nancy Wernicke. Nancy, would you like to ask your question?
You're muted.
Well, I'll help Nancy while she's looking for mute. She had asked in our chat, Carol, if you could specifically talk about what kind of capital. You said that capital is needed. What? Oh, there she is.
I found the unmute. Yeah, I know this is a pretty broad brush question, but I'm just curious, when you were talking about needing capital, if there's any idea of like what kind of capital is needed.
Well, we had our office space in Salem, Oregon right now. It's down on Front Street. And we had thought about having our offices upstairs and having a shelter in the main floor. But they wanted like $2.1 million for that particular building. Now, if we had a building that was donated to us or on a $1 a year, 30-year lease, as long as it's being provided for homeless services, then that's something that we would absolutely look into.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that last question, Nancy. Maria, thank you for moderating the Q&A. And Carol, thank you so much for a great presentation. I know we had more questions. If you're willing, could you put your email in the chat box, and then perhaps those who still had questions could email you. Absolutely. I am among them. Next week, we'll hear from Peace Corps Director Jody Olson. And this meeting will once again be live via Zoom at noon next Tuesday. Today, I want to thank our virtual guests, especially Ellen Catania from Easter Seals, Oregon. She was in my breakout group. It was great talking with you, Ellen. Thank you so much for your service to such a worthwhile organization. Chris, thank you for your reflection. Tara, for your presentation on the Homelessness Solutions Committee. Dan, thank you for your introduction of our speaker. And Carol, thank you again for a thought-provoking presentation. I know that my vision of Easter Seals was greatly expanded, and I can always tell from the number and quality of the questions what a positive impact a program has had. And in honor of our fellow Rotarians who are veterans, if we were at the Sentinel, we would have you stand. Could you please raise your hand and we'll all applaud you virtually instead. Please have our veterans raise their hands and thank you so much for your service. We are grateful. Now, as we enter into a new Rotary week, please join me in opening the doors of opportunity for healing, for recovery, and for peace building. As Rotarians, we're here to make our world healthier, more sustainable, and with justice for all, including veterans who are homeless. Thank you all for coming. Have a great week, and this meeting is adjourned.